to talk about how you can code the product CRUD, right? When I say the product CRUD, then I mean that the models, the controllers, and inside the models, all the functionalities that are available to the user, for example, to search the product, to get the product details, right? Apart from that, you can even add a product. All of these kind of functionalities we are going to build. We are going to build an end-to-end MVC solution for products. When I say end-to-end MVC solution, then we are not going to actually code the views. Rather than we are going to expose it as an API that we will leave for the front end to consume. For this video, we are going to write the model that is going to be our business logic for product. We are also going to write controllers that is going to be the first line of defense whenever we will get any request on any particular route. And yes, you guessed it right. We are also going to add routes, all the routes that are going to actually help us to call the corresponding functionalities. So without any further delay, let's just start. So first of all, what you have to do is you need to go to the controllers and you can add a new controller, that is product controller.js, right? Inside the product controller.js, we are going to write all our functionalities that is going to belong to the product, the logic for the product, and rest of the things, right? Okay. Apart from that, we are going to also make a new file, product.js inside the models, right? So we are going to have two files, product controller and product.js. Okay. So let's first of all try to build our business logic first, and then maybe we can try to go and set up our controller, and then we will also be able to set up the corresponding routes. So inside the product controller, we actually need to have, first of all, our SQL connection. So const SQL connection is equals to require. Inside our services, we have this folder of file of SQL connection. So this SQL connection is actually going to help us to actually set up the connection between the MySQL server on the Amazon cloud, and then actually even execute the queries there. Okay. So we are going to write few functions. So first function that we are going to write is list products, right? And let's say this time we are going to write the models with a different logic. Here you can see last time when I wrote my model that was inside category, I just passed a callback because there was no extra parameters that were expected from the user's end. But here, let's say we are also going to pass a data, or for the timing we can even avoid data here because later we are eventually going to add it. But let's say let's keep things simple and let's just pass the callback because we just want to list all the products. So we'll write a SQL let SQL is equals to select ID as product ID. I believe everyone knows about this, as it is alias for any column. So like the real column name is ID, but you are going to use it as an alias for product ID, right? So whenever we will be fetching the data, the key that we will be getting is product ID. Then we can say name as name, small name, right? Apart from that, we need price as price from products, right? This is something that we are going to have. Then we'll say let values, or let's see what was the convention we were using, let data, or let's say values only, is equals to this empty array. This is the same data array that we were having, right? And we are going to just fetch all the products. So first of all, we will say SQL connection dot execute query. Now this is going to actually execute the query. Which query? Which is written inside the SQL. If we are going to pass any values, although it is empty, but still we need to pass this array. And then we are going to get a callback. This callback is going to have an error and a result. If there will be any error, it will be reflected. Otherwise, in the result parameter, we are going to get our actual list of products. Okay. So we'll say the callback will be called with error comma result. And I believe everyone is aware about the fact that this callback is going to be passed by the controller to the model. Okay. So first of all, we'll do module dot exports list products. So now this is going to be available to our models, right? We are going to add few more functionalities as well, but for the timing, let's just keep it like this. Now we'll come to the product controller, right? In the product controller, we will first try to fetch const product is equals to require. Inside our models, we have a product model, right? Now using this product model, we are going to add all the functionalities for the corresponding controller, because now this controller is going to consume this product model. This is very important to understand, right? Okay. So we'll write a function list products inside our controller, list products. It is going to take a request and a response. I believe everyone is comfortable about the fact that inside our controllers, every time we are going to get an HTTP request object, which is going to store everything that has been passed to us within the request. And there will be a response object as well that is going to store everything that is we are going to pass as a response. Okay. So let or for the timing we are not having any request, so let's just directly do product dot list products, right? Now this list products is coming from the model, because this product object is the model object. Okay, and here we are going to pass that callback function, right? Inside our callback we are expecting an error and a result to come. Okay, quite similar to category, right? So first of all, we will check if there is an error. We'll do console.log error. Then we'll say return res.status. What should be the status? Now the status should be 500 because there was some internal server error. Then send, and we are going to keep a message parameter. Let's say not able to fetch the products, and we'll pass success as false. So this will be the case when, let's say, we were trying to fetch the products and we were maybe not able to connect to the SQL, or maybe the query was wrong, anything like some server side logic is broken. That's why we are having an internal server error. If there was no internal server error, that means in the result parameter we are having all the products. So we'll say return res.status. Now the status should be 200 because we were able to fetch it. Dot send, and now we will build our JSON message successfully fetched all the products, right? We are going to have success as true, and then we are going to have a products parameter where we can pass directly the result, right? And then what we should do is we should try to expose this module.export. We should try to expose this because this will be later used with our routes, right? Now you guys might be thinking, there might be a doubt in your mind that why we are setting the status with this function and not something like this, status as 500, right? So both of the ways are correct. The best part about this function dot status is that it actually already has got a property status, right? And that property is detectable by all the API callers like Postman, like Insomnia, right? So if you will use this dot status property, it will actually embed that the request has failed. It will, the other API handlers are going to automatically detect the fact that, okay, if this is a 500, then this is not so good, right? But if you will just add a status property here and then just add 500, it will be treated like any other property, and they will not detect any other piece of information, or they will not like actually understand what is going on with the request. But using this, the Postman softwares like Postman, Insomnia, all these API callers are going to actually understand, because this status property is embedded in the response, like directly in the response, and they are going to fetch this dot status functions property only. So this is a very crucial piece of information that I would like to that I wanted you guys to know, right? We can even demonstrate that, but first of all, now you know that our model is ready, our controller is ready. Now what's the next step? Yes, you guessed it right. We need to set up the routes, right? And where can we set up the routes? We need to go inside the route /API/v1. So here we will go to the index of the /API/v1. And first of all, let's get product controller. So const product controller is equals to require. Now we are inside v1. We'll first go one folder up, another folder up, another folder up. Now we are in the source direct. Now in the home directory. Now we'll go to source controllers and we'll say product controller. So here you can see we have successfully fetched the product controller. And now what we can say is router.get /product/all, comma, product controller.list products. Now whenever we will try to make a call to /product/all, we will be actually calling this list products controller. Inside the list product controller, we are going to eventually call the list product model, and this model is just going to fetch all the products, right? So let's see whether it works fine or not. So what we can do, first of all, let's just start our server. The server is up and ready, right? Let me open Postman. So here you can see the Postman is also ready, and we can just update our request from category/all to product/all, right? And if you will send it, okay. So here you can see we have fetched all the products inside our DB, right? So now we are able to fetch all the products. We are able to completely fetch all the products, you can see, and you can even verify this here. So let's say if I do products, I'm not sure if I'm still connected to it, products, and if I run it, see all the products we are getting, right? And this is an array of objects. See, this is an array of objects. So now this API is ready for getting consumed in the front end, right? And again, if you talk about the architecture, like how this all thing worked. So again, the same thing. From our client, we made an HTTP request. What was the client? Postman was the client. We made an HTTP request to the server. Inside the server, we saw that, okay, now the route is /API/v1/product/all. So whenever we are going to hit this route, we will actually map ourselves to a controller. The whole request object and the expected response object is passed as the parameter to the controller. Inside the controller, we have some logic where we will actually call the models having all the business logic. It is going to interact with the DB by raising the SQL query. DB is going to give response to the model is going to execute some more business logic, and then it is going to return back to the controller is going to return back to the server, and eventually the HTTP response is going to be sent back to the client, right? So again, the same logic is there. You can see that here, right? We hit the route here. We have this controller. We go to the controller. Inside the controller, we have this model. The model is going to execute the query. We are going to go to the DB, execute the query. We come back to the model by returning the response. Then we return the response here by building the whole JSON object, and then eventually the server returns the object to the client. So this is something that is really very important. Now, this is the first part of the API that we have done. We should write one more API in order to add some products as well. This is going to be helpful for all our admin users who are going to eventually add some products, right? So let's just do that. So let's say one more function we are going to write, add product. Then we are going to pass a data property and a callback. Now this is something that is going to be interesting and different as well. Why this data parameter inside my model? Earlier I was not having any data parameter. So whenever we are adding product, the user is going to give us some properties of the product, right? Maybe name of the product, price of the product, so on and so forth. So this data is going to be sent by the user in my HTTP request only. During my HTTP request only, I am going to send this data to the server. So this HTTP request is eventually going to store all of this data that I want to be constructed as the product. When it receives it is received at the server sends it to the controller. So in the request parameter of my controller, I will be having all the data. So the controller has to also pass this data to the model, because model is going to store everything inside the DB. So model should be aware about all the parameters that the user wants to be added as the product parameters. So model is going to take one more parameter, that is the data property. Inside this data, we are going to have all the data that is sent to us by the user. So before writing it, we can just directly add it to the module.exports, right? And then what we can say is, let's build a SQL. Let SQL. Now this is going to be a bigger SQL, so I'll use multi-line strings. So insert into products, right? Insert into products. Then let's say we can say name, price, description, category ID, vendor ID, created at, updated at. Now you might be thinking, how do I know all these properties of products? It's really simple, right? You can just go to products here. Here you can see there are products. You can go to all the columns and you will be able to see all the columns here in the products, right? So we have to fill all the columns, and we are going to use the insert command. Now what values we are going to put? Insert into this values. I believe everyone knows about this syntax. And then in the values parameter, we actually pass the values. But this model doesn't know about these values, right? The user is going to pass these values. And when the user is going to pass these values, we are going to receive those values in the data property. So how we actually populate it here? Now, this whole MySQL package that we have used in order to set up the SQL connection is going to give us a very good functionality. Whatever things we are going to pass from the user, we can for the time being keep it as question mark. So price will be given by user, description will be given by user, right? And category ID will be given by user, vendor ID will be given by user. All these four properties are given by user. Created at, we can use the timestamping function, that is now. This is coming from MySQL. And updated at can also be now, because this is the first time we are creating the product. And this is the whole SQL that we have built. Now you might be thinking that, okay, how these question marks are going to be replaced by actual values. Now here comes the magic for this values array, right? So what we will do is, let values is equals to an empty array. We'll say values dot push data dot name, values dot push data dot price, values dot push data dot description, right? And there should be one more question mark, I guess, right? Price, description, name, price, description, then category ID. So values dot push category ID, values dot push vendor ID, right? So you might be thinking that, okay, what's going on? What this array is going to store? So the first value this array is going to store is the name. This zeroth value, or the first, like whatever you say, I'm talking in terms of indexes. This zeroth value is going to be replaced by the zeroth question mark. This first value that is priced is going to be replaced by the first question mark. This second value of description is going to be replaced by the second question mark, and so on and so forth. So sequentially we are going to place question marks at all the positions inside my query. Like this is an insert query. You can also use a select query or update query, whatever query it is. Wherever you want to pass a user defined value, some value that is given to us by the user, at that position we are going to keep this question mark, and then we are going to fill this values array. This values array should have sequentially correctly ordered values that should replace the question mark, right? I'll also show you some logs where you will be able to understand it more. Then this query is completely ready. Now we'll do SQL connection dot execute query. Now we'll pass the SQL, and now we will pass this values array inside my SQL. So this SQL connection file, which is currently dependent on this MySQL package, MySQL 2 package is going to handle all of this. It is going to take the values from the values array. It is going to take the SQL and it is going to replace all the question marks with the correct values, right? So we don't have to bother about that. And we'll say function error or result. If we are able to execute the query, then we'll get result, otherwise we'll get error. In both of the cases, let's just call the callback that is given to us by the controller. Result, and our model is ready. Now what we need to do, we need to add the corresponding controller, right? This controller should have all the values that is received to us from the user, right? And that means we will be having everything in the request object. So what we can do is we can go to product controller, right? And let's say we'll have one more function, add product, right? It is going to take a request and a response, add product. Okay. So first of all, we'll say let data is equals to, now where we are going to have all of this data about the product that the user has given. So we are going to make this API as a post request. In a post request, always we send the data in request.body. So we'll say request.body. Right. There are multiple ways to send data. You can even also send it in the URL params, query params, request body, right? But depending on what convention you are using, what type of request you are using, it changes. So currently this API is going to be a post request. Okay. Now, the user might send you hampered data, right? Like maybe the name is not present, or maybe name and price is present, but category ID is not present, right? So we'll say we need to keep a check if data.name and data.price and data.description and data.category ID and data.vendor ID. If all of these things are present, then only we are going to actually raise the call, right? Else this is a malformed request from the user's end. The server is not having any issue. If user is not providing any one of these parameters that are actually required for the query, then it's the user's mistake. So we'll say rest.status 401, right? So we can read about the status code. What status code should we put, right? So HTTP status codes MDN, right? So let's just go to MDN docs and client error responses, bad request, server will not process the request due to something that is perceived to be a client error, malformed request syntax. So we should technically use this, right? 401, bad request. So we'll say 401 dot send message incorrect parameters sent for the request, and we'll say success as false. Okay, this is the case when the request is malformed, but let's say the request is not malformed, then we can eventually call our product.add product, right? Now this add product function is expecting what? Two parameters, data and CB. That is a callback. So we'll say pass data and the callback will be function error comma result, right? We'll say if there is an error, then we'll do something, otherwise we'll do something. So if there is an error, we'll say return res, this is return res.status. What should be the status? Now we were able to make the call to the model and the rest of the backend. Now there was some issue. If there was an issue, there was some issue from our backend logic only. So it was an internal server error. Will they send and prepare a response message? Let's say something went wrong, can't add products, and we'll say success as false, right? This will be one case. And then if there was no error, then we'll say return res.status 200, everything is okay, dot send, we'll say message successfully added the product. We'll say success as true, that we are able to successfully add the product, and we don't need to actually send any response or anything. It should be fine, right? Okay, because we are just adding it, we don't need to like specifically show anything to the user. Okay, now one last step is remaining. We have added the controller, we have added the model. Now you guessed it right, we have to add the API. And when I say, then the API route to be specific. So what we are going to do, we are going to go to this index.js, and now we have to add another, I would say, route. So we'll say router dot post. Now this is going to be a post request about slash product slash add, and we are going to map it with product controller dot add product. And this should be a good to go, right? We have added the model, the controller is calling the model, the route is calling the controller, things should be good, right? So let's see, we need to restart the server. Okay, now we will come to the postman, right? We'll come to postman, and let's say we will make this request as slash product slash add. Now this request should be a post request, so we have changed the type of the request to post. And here you can see a body parameter, right? So we'll click on body, right? And we'll say raw. So we are going to pass some things in the body, and here you can convert it into a JSON, that we are going to pass the request body as a JSON object, right? So let me reduce the size of this. Okay, now there should be a name, right? What should be the name of the product? Let's say iPad Air, right? What should be the price of the product? Let's say 50,000. What should be the description of the product? The brand new Apple iPad Air. Okay, and let's just send these three parameters only, right? We have not sent category ID and vendor ID. Let's just try to send these three parameters only. If you will send the request, okay, so we are getting internal server error. This should not be the case. Let me check. We should get 400, I believe, right? So if data.name, data.price, data.description, data.category ID, and vendor ID is not the case, then we should send this. Okay, so what we can do is we can add a console.log here with the data, what we are getting in the data. Let's restart the server, and we are getting the error status is not defined. Let me check. Oh, sorry, my bad. So this was the error. Actually it is working fine. It is working fine. This is not status 401, it is rest.status, that is response.status 401. Okay, let's rerun the server, and let's again send our malformed request, and see, we are getting incorrect parameters sent for the request. We need to send all the parameters. Okay, now let's just see what category do we have. So let's say, let's query on the category. What's the name? Categories. Okay, my bad. Okay, so we have this category as electronics, right? So let's just add the category ID as 1. Category ID as 1. Now you can see we need to add it as a string, right? It's giving error. Numbers can be there, but text is always expected to be string while sending the request. And we should have a vendor ID. Let's say vendor ID is 3, for example. Now if you will try to send, okay, there are some other incorrect parameters. See, vendor ID spelling is not correct. So let's just try to send it again. Okay, there are still some incorrect parameters. Okay, let's see, name is there, price is there, description, let's see, description. Then we need to have category ID, right? So let's say category ID, and we should have vendor ID. Vendor ID, let's see. Interesting. We are still missing something, I guess. Name is there, price is there, description is there. Okay. Cool. Now it's a time to see what we are getting in console.log data. Let's restart the server. Let's send our request again. Okay. Now the server must be having this. Okay. So now you can see this is empty, right? Now we are missing a very major and important part. Okay. So now this part is empty. We are actually sending some data. But we are not receiving it. Although we can see that we are having this request as post also, but still we are not receiving it. This is because currently we have not correctly configured how we should actually receive the JSON response from the end client, right? This is something that is going to be very, very important, right? So what we can do is we have to add one more argument here, app.use. This is going to be another middleware, and we'll say express.json, right? And I believe this should be a good to go. Let's resume our application. And category ID is not defined. Let's see. Okay, so at least we are now able to get the data on the backend. You can see that here, right? We can get the data on the backend. Now it says category ID is not defined. So let's see. So most probably in our model, we have given a wrong spelling. So this should be category ID. Category ID, and here also this vendor spelling is wrong. This is vendor ID. Okay, let's restart the server and everything should be good to go, I guess. Let's send it. Okay, it's still getting category ID not defined. In product.js line number 20. Okay, this should be data.category, my bad. This should be data.category and data.vendor ID. Okay, because it's like the data is a JSON object, right? You can see that the data is a JSON object, so we need to fetch that parameter. Let's restart the server again. And we are able to successfully add the product. If you go to the table and query for products, okay, so here you can see iPad Air, the brand new Apple iPad Air, and we are having all the details as well as the timestamps. So what were the issues? Let me go through the issues all over once again. So first of all, we need to add this express.json. This is a middleware that what it does, whatever request you are going to send from the end client, this express.json is actually going to help Express to parse that JSON. Otherwise, Express will not be able to read it. And here you can see how do you send a request. You make the request post, you go to body and you select this as the JSON object and you prepare this whole JSON. If you will not add express.json there, it will not be able to read this JSON object that we are sending in the HTTP request. Now you can see that, as I said, client will be sending everything in the HTTP request. So in the controller, if you will carefully see, I have fetched this from request.body. So the request parameter is having this body field, and inside the body we are having the whole JSON. What we are doing then, we are going to have a validation check on the JSON that all the properties are present. If all the properties are present, then we'll say that we will go and add the product. Otherwise, we'll say that there is incorrect parameters. When we are adding the product, we are passing this data, that is the JSON that we have received from the client, and we are passing this data for the add product and this callback as it is. If you go to add product, here you can see that this data parameter is getting passed here as well, and we are preparing the SQL. Wherever you have to put this data parameter values like the name, the price, you will put a question mark in that SQL, and our MySQL2 packages automatically handle it. How? We are going to have all these parameters inserted in the array in sequential correct order, and it will automatically replace all the question marks with all these values. So what you can do is here also you can do console.log values, right? And let's restart our server. Let's change something. So let's say iPad Pro. This is now, let's say 1 lakh Pro, right? And we'll send it again. See, another product added successfully. And now here you can see this is the JSON object that has received on the controller, and this is the array that has been made at the model, right, for the values array. This array is going to be as it is passed to the query. So see, the first parameter is iPad Pro, And here in the query also we want the first parameter as name. Second is price. We want it as the price because second is price. Then we have the description. So third is going to be replaced by the description, and so on and so forth. So this is how we are going to set up any user driven request, like where the user is going to pass the data, where the user is going to give us all the data, right? So we have completed our list products and add products API, right? We have successfully set up all the routes. There were two routes. One was a get request, one was a post request. Apart from that, we have also set up the controller successfully, where we have listed the list products as well as the add products, right? Also, we added inside our index.js, that is the main server file. We have also added this app.useexpress.json, which is a middleware. So I should write it, middleware, which helps us to parse any data in form of JSON coming from front end, right? So this is going to be very, very important in order to pass all the request. So guys, this was it for all today, and we have successfully added our basic product API. In the upcoming videos, what we are going to do, we are going to also implement some filter functionalities, where currently we are getting all the products, right? Then maybe we can filter some products based on some property. Then we are also going to set up our cart, like in the DB, if you will see, there is a table named as order items. This order item is actually going to behave as a cart, because this will be having the product, how much quantity of the product you have added in the cart, it belongs to which order, the order will be belonging to a user. So a lot of association we have to see. That is going to be really very interesting in order to discuss that. So that being said, let's just wrap this video. We are going to meet very, very, very soon in some other video, guys. Till then, take care, bye bye, have a great week ahead, and thank you.
Oh, so, 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 so. So,